Imagine for a moment that time is not the straight line we all know, divided into past, present, and future. What if time is actually a web of possibilities, where all moments exist simultaneously, waiting to be accessed by our consciousness? This idea might seem distant from our everyday reality, but awakening to this new perception of time is exactly what leads us to the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is not just an extension of space or a scientific curiosity. It is, in fact, an invitation to transformation, a shift in how we view life, time, and our very being. Crossing this frontier of consciousness allows us to touch eternity and realize that life as we know it is just a part of something much greater. And thus, we take the first step on this journey. In our daily view, time seems like something solid, an uninterrupted flow that pushes us from one moment to the next. It moves forward without pause, leading us from birth to death, and this feels inescapable. But many spiritual and philosophical traditions suggest otherwise. For some of these traditions, time is not just linear. It is cyclical, a spiral that repeats and renews itself. The past, present, and future are not separated. They intertwine in a constant dance. Think of the many times you have felt a strong memory of the past, as if you were reliving that moment. Or when you had a premonition about the future, something that hasn't happened yet but feels inevitable. These glimpses are clues that time may actually be more fluid and interconnected than we imagine. Even science begins to suggest this. Albert Einstein, in his theory of relativity, revealed that time is not fixed but depends on the observer. Time can expand, contract, bend. It's as if the very fabric of reality is malleable, something that can be shaped according to our perception. This raises the question: if time can be bent and molded, does our spiritual essence also exist beyond it, in a state that transcends the limitations of the clock? Can we, by expanding our consciousness, access a new reality where time as we know it dissolves? The fourth dimension is often seen as an extension of space, in addition to the three physical dimensions we already know. However, it represents much more than that. When we talk about the fourth dimension as an expansion of consciousness, we refer to a new way of perceiving reality, a vision that transcends the limitations of linear time and opens us to a universe where the past, present, and future coexist. It's as if, suddenly, we were able to look at life from above, seeing not only what lies ahead of us but also what has passed and what is yet to come. This concept is not new. Many spiritual traditions, such as Hinduism and Buddhism, already speak of higher dimensions of existence that go beyond the physical. In Hinduism, for example, the concept of Maya describes the physical world as an illusion, suggesting that what we see with our eyes is only part of reality. By expanding our consciousness, we transcend this illusion and access higher dimensions where our true essence can be perceived. Similarly, Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from our identification with the material world and the belief that time is fixed. As we expand our perception, we begin to see that reality goes beyond what our senses can grasp, and we can touch the eternal. Just as our eyes see the world in three dimensions, our mind and soul have the capacity to see beyond these limitations. The fourth dimension invites us to awaken to this new reality, where consciousness expands and space and time become merely parts of a larger whole. It's like a revelation, where we suddenly realize that the life we know is just one layer of something far more vast. As we expand our consciousness into this new dimension, we begin to access new realities and possibilities that were previously beyond our understanding. Awakening to this new perception requires more than intellectual understanding. It requires a deep dive within and openness to the unknown. The fourth dimension is not just a concept, it is an experience, an invitation to explore the limits of our perception and discover that, beyond the three dimensions of space, there is a much richer reality where the mind and spirit can move freely. When we expand our perception to the fourth dimension, we begin to understand that the separation we often feel in relation to the world and other people is actually an illusion. Everything is interconnected, every being, every action, every thought is part of a cosmic web where nothing exists in isolation. Three-dimensional perception makes us see the world as separate compartments, me and the other, here and there, past and future. However, when we open our consciousness to the fourth dimension, this vision dissolves, and we realize that we are all interconnected, like threads in a vast web of existence. The notion of interconnection is central to many spiritual traditions. In indigenous wisdom, for example, there is a deep reverence for all creation, where the earth, animals, plants, and humans are seen as inseparable parts of a sacred whole. For these cultures, Nature is not something external to humans but an expression of the same spirit that dwells within us. Similarly, the concept of oneness, present in many mystical traditions, invites us to realize that at a deep level, there is no real separation between things. Everything is part of a single universal consciousness. As our consciousness expands, we begin to perceive that every act we perform, every word we speak, and even every thought we nurture has an impact on the whole. We are like waves in a vast ocean, seemingly independent, yet deeply connected to the larger movement. When we understand this, our actions take on new weight. We realize that our existence is not an isolated experience, but that we are part of a cosmic fabric where everything is interconnected. This interconnection is not just an abstract philosophical idea. It can be felt in moments of deep connection with nature, with other people, or even during meditation. When we are in tune with this web of life, we feel that we are part of something much greater, something that goes beyond our individuality. This perception brings us a sense of responsibility, not just for ourselves but for the world around us. And it is through this connection that we can truly understand what it means to live in the fourth dimension, where the barriers of separation dissolve and the unity of all creation is revealed. As we awaken to the fourth dimension, our perception of time also transforms. In the three-dimensional reality, we are used to seeing time as a continuous line, a flow that moves from the past to the future, passing through the present. However, in the fourth dimension, time reveals itself as something cyclical, in constant renewal. It is not a straight line that pushes us in one direction but a spiral where each point is connected to another, and where cycles of birth, growth, death, and rebirth repeat indefinitely. This concept of cyclical time is not new. Ancient cultures already understood time as a series of interconnected cycles. Buddhism, for example, speaks of samsara, the continuous cycle of death and rebirth, where life is seen as a journey that repeats until the soul reaches enlightenment and is freed from this cycle. Similarly, indigenous traditions also recognize time as something cyclical, where life, death, and renewal are part of a greater whole. The seasons of the year, the cycles of the moon, and even the natural rhythms of the human body reflect this same truth. Time is a spiral, not a straight line. When we view time from the perspective of the fourth dimension, we begin to recognize these patterns in our own lives. The experiences we live, the lessons we learn, often return in new forms, offering us the chance to evolve, to change. What seems like repetition is, in fact, an opportunity for deeper growth, a constant renewal. The challenges we face, the cycles of loss and rebirth, are part of this great cycle of transformation that permeates all things. Instead of resisting these cycles, we can begin to see them as opportunities to evolve, as part of the natural rhythm of life. The cyclical perception of time invites us to accept the impermanence of all things and to recognize that even amidst change, there is a greater constancy. Just as winter always gives way to spring, darkness always gives way to light, and the end of one phase of life always brings the beginning of another. Time, seen through the lens of the fourth dimension, is an eternal cycle of transformation and renewal, where nothing truly ends but only transforms. This vision allows us to live with more serenity, accepting the ups and downs of life as part of a greater dance that always leads us toward rebirth and renewal. Awakening to the fourth dimension is not just a matter of intellectual understanding. It requires an inner journey. This expansion of perception does not happen outside of us but within. The key to accessing this new dimension lies in transforming our consciousness, and this can only be achieved through self-knowledge. The fourth dimension is not a physical place we can reach. It is a state of being, a new way of perceiving and relating to the reality around us. Many spiritual practices teach that the path to this expansion of consciousness begins with internal stillness. Meditation, mindfulness, and other forms of introspection are doors that lead us to this new dimension. When we quiet the mind and turn inward, we stop identifying with linear time and the illusion that we are just bodies trapped in time and space. In this inner silence, we begin to perceive that we are, in fact, immortal consciousnesses capable of transcending time and accessing the eternity that resides within us. When practicing meditation, for example, we come into contact with a state of presence that goes beyond the concerns of daily life. In this state, time seems to dissolve, and we begin to experience moments of deep connection with something greater. The fourth dimension reveals to us that time and space are only surface layers of reality and that by expanding our perception, we can access a much vaster truth. In this inner space, we realize that the now is not just a point between the past and the future but a portal to eternity, where all possibilities coexist. The awakening to the fourth dimension, then, is a journey of self-discovery. It is an invitation to explore what lies beyond the rational mind, beyond perception limited by the senses. As we dive deeper into our own consciousness, we begin to realize that reality is much broader than we imagined. Time, space, separation, all of these dissolve, and what remains is a sense of unity and wholeness. And it is in this inner awakening that we begin to see the world with new eyes, where time does not limit us and consciousness expands beyond the visible. When we begin to think in a four-dimensional way, this new vision not only transforms our perception of reality but also changes how we live our everyday lives. The idea that time is cyclical and that all things are interconnected directly affects our actions, decisions, and interactions. When we realize that every choice we make reverberates beyond the present moment, in directions we can barely imagine, our actions take on new meaning. We are always planting seeds whose fruits will be harvested in the future, and in some way that future already exists in the now. This shift in perception leads us to a state of greater presence. We often live trapped in worries about the future or regrets about the past. But four-dimensional thinking invites us to live fully in the present, understanding that it is in the now that we have the power to shape what is to come. By focusing on the present with expanded consciousness, each moment becomes sacred, each action is part of a larger whole. What we do today echoes in eternity, and this understanding brings us a profound responsibility in how we live our lives. This new perception of time also allows us to see that even in the most challenging moments, a greater purpose is at work. Instead of viewing difficulties as obstacles to be feared, we begin to recognize them as part of the natural cycle of growth and transformation. We know that the future is already being shaped by our current choices, and with that, we can act with more clarity and intention. Each choice is an opportunity to plant a new seed, which will grow and flourish in its due time. Living with this four-dimensional thinking is living with a broader vision of life. We are no longer limited to the linear perception of time or the belief that we are isolated from each other. Instead, we live with the awareness that the present is an intersection of many possibilities and that, by acting with intention, we can create a reality more aligned with our essence and purpose. This understanding brings us peace and invites us to live more harmoniously, knowing that in every moment, we are creating not only our future but also contributing to the collective future. The awakening to the fourth dimension is not just an individual journey, it is also an opportunity for the expansion of collective consciousness. As more and more people begin to realize that time, reality, and consciousness are much vaster than we imagine, the possibility of global transformation emerges. One person's awakening to this new way of perceiving life inevitably affects those around them, creating a wave of change that spreads throughout society. And as this consciousness expands, the potential for a new era of understanding and collective harmony draws nearer. Many spiritual traditions speak of a collective awakening, a moment when humanity as a whole transcends the limitations of three-dimensional perception and enters a new phase of evolution. This concept of global awakening is present in various cultures, from the idea of the Age of Aquarius in astrology to indigenous prophecies that speak of a spiritual rebirth of humanity. The idea is that by transcending linear time and separation, we can access a new form of collective consciousness where the boundaries between individuals and nations begin to dissolve, giving way to a vision of unity and interconnectedness. The future of human consciousness, then, is directly linked to our ability to awaken to this new reality. If we remain trapped in the limited perception of time and separation, our spiritual evolution will stagnate. However, if we accept the invitation of the fourth dimension, not only will we transform our own lives, but we will also contribute to the awakening of all humanity. The expansion of four-dimensional consciousness allows us to see that humanity is one. Each individual, each society, each living being is part of a single interconnected organism. This collective awakening is not just a possibility, it is already happening. Every day, more people are opening themselves to this new way of perceiving reality, and with that, they are creating a future where cooperation, empathy, and mutual understanding become the foundation of society. What was once seen as impossible, a global civilization based on unity and respect for one another, now seems increasingly achievable. And what we are beginning to realize is that the true future of humanity is not in material conquests but in the collective spiritual awakening. This is the four-dimensional leap that awaits us, and we are all part of it. Four-dimensional thinking offers us more than a new perspective. It opens the possibility for a profound transformation at all levels of our existence. As we awaken to this new vision of time, reality, and consciousness, we begin to realize that we are co-creators of our lives and the world around us. The journey to the fourth dimension is not about escaping reality but about transcending it, integrating a new perception that allows us to live with more intention, wisdom, and compassion. This awakening begins within each of us. By quieting the mind and diving into the inner space, we discover that time and space are merely parts of a much larger reality. The fourth dimension is always available to us. It manifests in moments of deep presence, in conscious gestures, in reflections that transcend the immediate. It is a state of being that we can access at any time, but it requires us to be willing to see beyond appearances and the limitations imposed by three-dimensional vision. As we integrate this new perception into our lives, we begin to feel the effects of living in a four-dimensional way. Our choices become more conscious, our actions more aligned with our deepest values, and our understanding of the world expands. Living with an expanded vision allows us to navigate life with more clarity and purpose, knowing that each moment carries within it an infinity of possibilities and that we are always part of something greater. And so, as we awaken to the fourth dimension, we become agents of transformation, not only in our own lives but in the world as a whole. Each person who awakens to this new vision contributes to the collective awakening of humanity, helping to build a future where consciousness, love, and unity prevail over the illusion of separation and limitation. This is the true impact of four-dimensional thinking. It connects us to the eternal, the infinite, the divine that is within each of us. The journey to the fourth dimension is just beginning. And are you ready to explore this new reality? Remember, the awakening doesn't happen out there but within you. By transforming your own perception of time and reality, you are contributing to a new chapter in humanity's evolution. The fourth dimension is more than an idea. It is a state of being that can transform your life and help shape the future of collective consciousness. If you felt inspired by this message, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of spiritual expansion and self-discovery. Until next time.